All right, guys, we are back now on this show, and we're going to talk about a game that I didn't think I would really touch on when we came to last weekend, like around Friday, when I was predicting these outcomes. This was not a game that I sort of thought I was going to, reflect on or really talk too much about, but I was wrong, obviously. We saw Cleveland upset the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that's 2-8 at the time, upset a team that's 8-2 at the time as well. And we had a similar sort of situation here with the Tennessee Titans going into Houston and defeating the first place Texans by a score of 32-27 in what was a really, really entertaining game. From this point on, the Titans, win this game and they improve to 3-8 while the Texans drop to 7-5. And also, on that note about the recent performances of the Houston Texans, Houston has now lost 3 of its last 4 games, but still are 2 games ahead of the Indianapolis Colts in their division. But it's one of those cases where you look at the landscape of these divisions, and I saw today in how the Packers are like 8-3, and the Seahawks are 6-5, and the Falcons are 6-5. And the Falcons and the Seahawks are 3-4, while the Packers are stuck as like the 6th or the 5th seed, right? And I think it's similar in this situation where you think of the Texans and where they would be if they were just playing in a different division, right? Where they would be in the AFC West, even, right? Everybody's like 7-5, 7-6. The Texans could be like third or second in that division, and maybe even out of the playoffs. And then you look at them maybe in the AFC North, they'd be right up there with the Ravens and the Steelers, obviously, in that division, and probably not being as the number 4 seed as well. They're pretty fortunate that their division is the second worst in the AFC, I think, other than the AFC East. The AFC South has not really had a good go of it in 2024. But speaking on that, Tennessee came in having lost 5 of their last 7 games. Their first loss came to the Colts in the division, I believe, and then now their second game in the division, they hand the Texans their first loss in the AFC South as well. Up until this point, Houston had defeated every team in that division at least once, up until now, obviously, with the Titans. And this game, much like we saw throughout the entire, I think, Week 12, or for the most part, where we saw a lot of the big moments, there was more bad critical special teams plays than this one. There was a fumbled punt by the Titans, a devastating missed field goal by the Houston Texans, also Kaimi Fairbairn. You saw it, like he just fell to his knees at just like how of just pure disbelief that he missed that field goal. We're gonna get into it a little bit more, but yeah, I mean the special teams definitely was a big loser this week in the NFL in Week 12. This was also, oddly enough, Tennessee's first win of the season in a game in which Will Levis both started and finished the game actually playing. Other times he would be out injured. He was dealing with that shoulder injury for a little bit, but he played pretty well in this game. Looking at the performances, I thought Will Levis showed a lot of poise and just really like a lot of a desire to win, where it is hard to show that desire when you're probably not going to make the playoffs, you're not really playing for too much, and you've been criticized. You've had these bad moments, but still, for him to go out there, post a 278-yard day, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He got sacked 8 times in this game and had a quarterback rating of 123 and somehow still won. Then you look at Tony Pollard. He added a big boost from the running game with 24 carries and 119 yards. He also added a touchdown, while Calvin Ridley led all receivers with 93 yards, and he had 5 receptions to Tyler Boyd's 6 receptions in this game overall. Not only did Will Levis throw an interception in this game, but he also lost the fumble as well. So it was a pretty rocky game just from the turnovers and things like that, but they ended up winning this game. And you might ask why. Well, we're going to get into that a little bit. Before that, though, I'm going to look at, the Texans side of things, because it is important to kind of point this out, because CJ Stroud had a decent game. He had 247 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He got sacked 4 times as well. But the biggest thing to take away from the performances was Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon had 14 carries and 22 yards total rushing in this game, whereas the games before that, he posted 109 against Dallas, 46 against Detroit, 106 against the Jets, and 102 against the Colts. This was by far Joe Mixon's worst game of 2024. Nico Collins had a big impact, though. He had 5 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. But I wanted to point out some of the things we saw as an overall team, right? Because in this game, we saw the third down efficiency be very bad for both teams. The Titans were 4 of 14 on third down, and the Texans were only 3 of 13, so still technically worse. We look at the rushing comparison, and the Titans blew them out of the water by almost 100 yards on the dot. The Titans rushed for 132 yards, and the Texans only for 40. But what I really wanted to look at is the penalties in this game. The penalties for the Houston Texans, they had 11 on the day compared to the Titans' 6. You're not going to win anything or beat anybody, regardless of the record, having 11 penalties. And not only that, the Titans had 10 more minutes of the ball, basically, in this game for a team like the Houston Texans, and how talented they are, even still, with the injury to Stephon Diggs, to have the other team have the ball 10 more minutes than you completely is a bit off-putting to me. So the way this game kind of played out, and if you guys didn't watch it, it started off pretty pretty high pace, honestly. The 7 drives that we had to start this game, they all led to points in the first half, and while also each team also turned the ball over in the first half. We had CJ Stroud throw an interception as well, and the Titans also fumbled the ball as well during the first half. But CJ Stroud, one of the, both interceptions I obviously wasn't a fan of. No one's a fan of your team throwing interceptions, but the way and the moments that they came in, I thought were made them worse, in my opinion, for CJ Stroud, because the first one was really bad, because the first one came when the score was 17-17, right before halftime. CJ threw his first interception with 41 seconds left when he was pushed off against his own end zone, pretty much, or just in his own side of the field. There was 40 seconds left. You don't want to take a big risk, and he threw the ball over the middle, and there was a miscommunication with, I believe, John Mechie, and the ball fell right into the hands of Brownlee, I want to say. It fell right into the hands of Brownlee, and from that point on, the Titans were in short field position, and they managed to go into halftime, where it should have been 17-17. Instead, it was 20-17. So it might not seem like a lot, but that whole sequence is a big hit, in my opinion, to how this game turned out. Then you look at the second half, right, and it was even crazier than the first one. To start, CJ threw his second interception, a overthrow, or actually an underthrow. Kenneth Murray undercutted the throw and made a better interception than it was a bad throw. I would say the first one was pretty bad, but I think the second one was just a better play by Kenneth Murray. But regardless of that, you think at that point that the Texans are really, throwing this game away. But as soon as the Titans get back on the field, the first throw that Will Levis has after that interception, he throws an interception to Jimmy Ward, and he returns it all the way back for a pick six. And then from that point on, where you think the Titans are going to take a bigger lead, instead, the Houston Texans now lead 23-24. Then it gets even nuts, even crazier after that. After that, the Titans use one play to score a 70-yard touchdown to bring the lead to 30-27 over the Houston Texans. And then at this point, it's pretty back and forth, but the Texans were able to put together a great drive, and they got down to the very close to the field goal, right? They were in the red zone, but unfortunately they weren't able to convert on a touchdown, but they were still very close. The field goal was going to be a 28-yard field goal, and we saw Kaimi Fairbairn go out there, and for what was supposed to be a chip shot field goal, he hooks it left, and he completely misses it, so it stays at 30-27. I felt so bad for Kaimi Fairbairn. Almost like Austin Seibert on that extra point. I don't know which one's worse. That's a good question. Missing the extra point after that touchdown in the Washington game, or missing the the game-tying field goal. I would probably say the Commanders one was worse because you just had that awesome play, and all you need to do is kick the extra point, and then you miss it. That one's got to be a little bit worse. But this one was really bad. I felt really bad for Kaimi Fairbairn. But, still, Houston got the ball back after they forced the Titans to punt it, and they went down there. They got the field, or actually no, they got the ball back, and they had an opportunity, right? But the final drive that they had really just started off pretty badly. There was a 7-yard sack on second down, and then C.J. Stroud pulls out his best Dan Orlovsky impression and runs out basically out of the back of the end zone. He gets tackled. It wasn't as bad as Dan Orlovsky's, obviously, but it kind of looked like it, right? He tried to escape the pressure. He steps out of the back of the end zone, and it's a safety, and the Texans, are punting the ball back to the Titans, and the game pretty much ends right there. And really great by the Texans or the Titans to grind out this win. When your quarterback gets sacked 8 times, you really have no business, in my opinion, winning that game for how poorly they played. But it's a testament to Levis, and I think Coach Callahan too. He deserves a lot of credit for still instilling some sort of desire to go out there and win, even though, again, you are 3-8, 2-8, right? I think that was great by them. But for Houston, I think it's also no surprise that this game looks as sloppy, as disorganized when Joe Mixon has a bad game. And I kind of talked about it last week where I mentioned how the Chiefs are running the ball, how the Ravens are obviously running the ball, the Steelers try to run the ball, the Chargers as well. And I felt like the Texans needed to really make that their identity. Not so much that we have Nico, we have Tank, and at the time we have Stephon Diggs. We're going to throw it all over the park. I felt like now, especially after that injury to Stephon Diggs, that having Joe Mixon as the main guy in this offense was going to be the clear pathway for them to play cleaner, more efficient football. And, it's not like they wanted to play bad, obviously, right? It's not like Mixon wanted to finish with like 22 yards or something. You understand that, but still, I think it highlights that this team is still, I think, finding their way of it. Last year was almost like just an anomaly of how well CJ played. And, he's been not playing his best ball. He threw 2 more interceptions yesterday, and he's thrown 5 interceptions combined over the last 3 games, and that's now 9 interceptions through 12 games, where last year he only had 5 in 15 games. So, that's obviously a cause for concern, but I think now it should shift the focus to them a little bit to try and really become a run-heavy team. Try not to abandon it so quickly, and try not to be so open to getting into these shootouts, right? It might sound a little bit weird, but kind of make these games a little bit more boring, if that makes sense, right? Go out there in 11 personnel, in 12 personnel, and things like that. Run the ball and make sure you're able to do that very well. It might not be as entertaining as Nico Collins catching like 55-yard touchdowns, but I think that way it's a better, more steady flow for the Texans, where they're still very young. They're still, trying to get all this experience under their belt. So as much as they can get it to be a constant flow, rather than having these massive like highs and valleys, these peaks and valleys, right, all over the place, you can't really control that. You don't really know where the game's going to end up, as opposed to the other way, right? And I think that's where the Texans kind of got to learn to try and adopt that way of playing, right? Not just make it into a shootout and just be so open to do that. Run the ball, try to get it more into an ugly game like that, and I think it'll serve them a lot better to control the game, basically. But the Titans get a massive win. The Texans still stay in 4th place because of their lead over the AFC South. So still a crazy game regardless of that. But we're going to still stick to the topic of divisional games, because the Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals game was very entertaining for a couple of reasons, right? There was a lot of high stakes, a good defense coming in, a very hot team in the Arizona Cardinals coming in to face the Seahawks off of their bye week. It didn't end up like anything I thought it would, but, that's what Week 12 brought us. So we're going to go into it, analyze it, and talk about what we learned from it when we return after this.
Looking for your